Coming to you from sunny California and the Great White North. Get ready. We are breaking down the obstacles on the Armchair Ninja Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Armchair Ninja Podcast. It is Friday, November 25th, 2016. My name is Rich, and joining me to kick off College Ninja Warrior is Bijan. How you making out?
Yeah, doing better than Team Houston, right?
We called it that we would be wrong. Does that count? I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool. It sucks in a way, but it's also kind of cool that the show is so unpredictable just by the fact that you can have a team that's just so incredibly dominant, but one small little mistake can just change the whole course of this entire show. And, we saw it today. So it's really interesting, and I don't know. We might be loaded up for quite a few surprises this season, man.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that because we're kind of jumping to the end of the episode, but whatever.
I certainly hope everybody that's listening to this watched the show. I mean,
yeah. But it's weird because we think of Team Ninja Warrior as being the more forgiving one, right? Where one little mistake won't be the end of everything. But we saw that can actually happen, that you can dominate the whole thing and just have one slip up, and that's enough to lose it all.
Yeah, and this is the epitome of it because we had one team that absolutely dominated the entire episode, and then we had one team that kind of just got by. No offense to them, but they're struggling their way up, and they did well for their own means. But man, it was really interesting, and it comes back to the argument of the formatting of the show, but I honestly see both sides.
Yeah, it adds a lot of drama to it. You can never assume anything, right? So the whole time you have to worry that your team may or may not make it through. So I like it. I thought it was great. So we're going to be covering, in case we haven't made it clear, the premiere episode of Team Ninja Warrior College Madness, and we're also going to talk about the National Ninja League competition at iCore Fitness. So let's do our thing, right? Let's go kind of piece by piece through this thing because there's lots to talk about.
Yeah. I guess before we even get into the show, how do you feel about the format's the same as Team Ninja Warrior, but I guess more of the obstacles, right? We can look at the obstacles, and we have a new sideline reporter. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So Casey's there as a sideline reporter. This might be the first time we've actually had a ninja athlete actually doing the commentary in any way, shape, or form, like someone who's actually done the obstacles. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I feel you. I don't know. Did we ever have oh gosh, Rich, what's the name of the guy? Evan Dollard. Did we ever have Evan Dollard on American Ninja Warrior as a sideline reporter, or was that only the Spartan show?
I think it was just Spartan, and he had that little series. Well, he had a couple series or cameos and extra
the little
things that he did with
training thing,
them.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, well then, yeah, she's the first one.
I thought she did okay. It wasn't great. It was a little repetitive. She's trying to relate to them and everything because it's pretty clear, right? The big story of the episode, as always, or as we saw with Team Ninja Warrior, was the women were, making up the warp wall and making some. It's not even history at this point, but it is kind of cool to see even the younger women being able to do it. The younger and shorter, 5'1", being able to do it. So that was cool. But she's trying to relate to it, like, hey, I remember the first time I did that. Do you remember that? Like, remember me, Casey?
Well, from my point, she's new to this, right? And she doesn't necessarily have all the excitement that another reporter might have. But at the same time, she does have a little bit more empathy and understanding of what these athletes have gone through. With that said, when we, covered her whole 24 before, she doesn't have the same camera presence as a lot of the other competitors, but it's still nice to have her because she is so popular with a lot of the more casual audience. So I don't hate it. I can definitely see where some people would be like, oh man, she's not the same as all the other sideline reporters, but give her a chance. It is her first time in front of the camera. Sometimes it takes some time to get used to.
100%. I think she can do it. I really do have confidence that she can get really good at it. I'm hoping I'm hoping it picks up over the season, and I think it probably will.
Mm-hmm. And worst comes to worst, I really like the idea of at least having a sideline reporter as a former Ninja Warrior. And I'm not saying she's done, but you know what I mean. Like, she's not in this particular season or series. So I like that idea. And maybe if there's a popular Ninja Warrior that retires sometime, maybe they can get a job like as a sideline reporter. I think that would work out quite well.
I could picture Natalie Duran doing a really good job of that.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, Natalie Duran, Grant McCartney, more of the more colorful competitors. Yeah, they would do a great job. Natalie Duran, that's a perfect pick.
So, looking at the obstacles themselves, there was very familiar course. It didn't look too different. There were a few changes. Started with the Sonic Swing, as we saw before. What did you think of the Ring of Fire, they called it? It was kind of an odd name for it. This is basically like a ring slider type obstacle.
Yeah, but with a little twist, and I really loved it, where they have this little stopgap on the descent, like I don't know, like 1/3 of the way down, and I really like that idea because it adds another element to the obstacle where you have to time it perfectly, and if you don't, you get caught up. And there's these small little things can really make a difference. We saw at one point somebody jumped. Well, I don't. Screw it, I'm saying it now. We saw a point where a guy like jumped up too early, or not too early, but he descended, right? He pulled down too quickly, and it stopped immediately with full force, and he completely couldn't hold himself up. Like, he instantly let go. And that's the cool little things where there's these small little tweaks and dynamics to all these obstacles, and I appreciated that quite a bit.
Yeah, I liked it. It was actually very similar to what we saw in the LA qualifier and finals, right? What's it called? It's called the ring jump or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
not quite as severe though, right? It was a perfectly streamlined version, I think, for Team Ninja Warrior. You want them to be able to do it quickly if they do it right, but have the little. I think it was just like you said, a good balance of those things.
Yeah.
And then the floating tiles, we lost cargo net. As we had before, and then the floating tiles instead of the dancing stones. What do you think of that change?
I liked it from the offset, but in practice, it just didn't have the same impact as the dancing stones. With that said, it didn't knock out as many competitors. We got to see more people at least go further in the course and actually have like a close race. So I'm cool with it. Like, it's not as difficult as the dancing stones, but at the same time, we don't have like half the field falling on the dancing stones and being like, oh, well, I wish I could have seen more. So it's cool. I mean, I think I would hate it more if it was on Team Ninja Warrior, like the main Team Ninja Warrior. But since this is College Madness and these are a lot of people where it's their first time on these obstacles, I'm cool with having an obstacle that's still difficult, but not insanely to that degree.
Did you think it was going to be easier? Because when I saw them, I thought it was actually going to be harder, and then I noticed they weren't really struggling with it at all. So I actually was surprised how well they get through them.
I think it's based on the spring. I mean, an obstacle like that can be drastically harder just loosening the springs a little bit more. It's kind of like how we talk about trampolines and everything else. It all depends on the springs. With that said, yeah, it could be a lot difficult. And initially looking at it, I'm like, oh boy, that's going to be really hard. Like, if they sway side to side and all this stuff, and if they really go in. But, they're really tight, so, it didn't give that much bend and movement. But with that said, it still slowed a lot of competitors down being careful, which I don't blame them for. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, with having them really taut would actually make a huge difference, because then you don't have the bounce. So they could even be the same obstacles we see on Team Ninja Warrior, but they could have it, the difficulty ramped up.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the pole grasper, which we did see actually in the first episode of last season, because I'll always remember watching Joe Moravsky make that jump halfway across the thing. The warped wall, and then the second half of the course, we can talk about it actually when we get further in. So in the first episode, we had the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Florida Gators, one of the biggest college rivalries out there, and the Houston Cougars versus the TCU Horned Frogs. I thought it was actually cool that they used, I don't know why I was surprised by this, but they actually used the college names, like the team names. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that.
I was expecting that fully. So,
well, to me, it seemed like it would make it more official, right? I kind of thought of this whole thing as being an unofficial thing, and I thought maybe the colleges would take issue with them. I mean, like college sports in the U.S., you guys are crazy about your college sports. Like those are full-fledged merchandise, like generating machines. So I don't know. I just kind of half expected them not to be able to use it for some reason, but it's cool that they did.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a sports show, and they are representing the team. So, in many ways, it is giving a lot of publicity for their teams. So, I don't necessarily see a lot of colleges dismissing it as much. I think it would have a lot more impact or a lot more complications if there was merchandise and stuff like that involved.
Yeah. Anyway, so the point system was the same. First 1 point for the first 2 runs, 2 points for the anchor run. So we're just going to cover the highlights since we don't know the individual ninjas quite as well as we do with the regular Team Ninja Warrior. So the matchup between Houston and TCU was good. It was a great way to start. We had lots of back and forth. It wasn't a blowout victory by any stretch. So the two teams kind of went. I actually really liked the matchup with the women. So they had Emma Becerra, the power lifter, who has her YouTube channel Lift Like a Girl, which is cool, versus Haley Houston, who we see throughout the episode, pole vaulter with the University of Houston. It was really good. We saw Haley, I do want to talk about their run a little bit. Haley struggling on the swing jump. She gets caught up. She was the first to the pole grasper. Then Emma got it after. And then Emma makes it up the wall after Haley missed her first attempt. Like, it was right down to the wire. Haley had the lead, didn't quite make it, and I love those ones where it's down to the wall. It's really exciting. We didn't have as many of those. If I had one complaint about this episode, is that we didn't have a lot of that. The two of them at the wall, making a run for it, missing the first one like we saw with the last season.
Yeah, but not just that. I mean, this matchup really, just both these women were incredibly impressive. Not only did we get one of them up the wall, and by the way, just shout out to all the women on this episode. I think this is going to be just like Team Ninja Warrior, where the women really, really impress. But, man, it was so close. You can tell that both these women were not just athletic, but they knew what they were doing. And that was one of my big question marks coming into this show. Are these competitors going to know what they're doing? We can expect the two guys from Team Houston to do well because, they train, but pretty much everybody else is kind of like question marks. And both these girls, both these women, really showed their prowess, and one got up the warped wall. Really impressive, dude.
Yeah, front to back, this whole episode was full of far stronger athletes than I gave them credit for. Like, there was no... I saw the pole grasper, and I thought, we had the regular ninjas failing on that and struggling on that. These people did not. It was really, really impressive the whole way through. And speaking of impressive, we have to give a shout out to Matisse. Oh my God, I knew he would be good. I didn't know he was going to be that good. He had no competition.
Yeah, he was flying through. He was, this was the big thing though. When it came to the matchup with the men from Team Houston, we saw this clear dynamic of two guys that were very technically proficient. Everything they're doing was correct, and you saw the guys that were competing against them more of just trying to muscle it out, keep up, but they weren't as technical, but they're keeping up based on their athleticism. And the thing that would always make Team Houston, advance and do much better is by the time they get to the last two obstacles, one person's kind of just blown out in terms of endurance and everything because they've just been struggling trying to keep up, whereas the other person has been able to just be a little bit more easier, being more technical and everything. And yeah, it definitely stood out with the Houston matchups. It kind of makes me kind of happy that Team Houston didn't make it to the championships, because in a way I kind of want to see just all these guys kind of struggle their way through and make it more, I guess, more fun or dramatic in a way.
You know what makes me really happy is that they were your pick to win the whole thing. So
I knew you were going to say that.
How could I not bring that up? Come on. Yeah. So your
brutal.
Team's out the first episode this season. Ha.
Yeah, that's fine. What else?
But yeah, so Zach Tamayo, it's the he did amazing too. But I really have to say, Matisse, also known as Kid, just there was nobody coming close to even touching him. There was just no no comparison.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up kid, by the way, I just have to say, like, have you ever felt so old in your life? Like, man, I think the oldest person in this entire episode was 22. And he definitely stood out in terms of, like, looking older than everybody else. Like, everybody in this episode was, like, 19 and 18. I'm like, geez, man. It's exciting because all these people can't be on American Ninja Warrior other than the 22-year-old. But other tthan that, wow.
Yeah, just somebody to look forward to in the coming seasons too, right? So we'll have an idea of who's to come on the show, on the main show.
Everybody in this episode was born in the mid-90s. Just take that in for a second.
They're growing up in these gyms. I think that's the thing, right? They're not.
Yeah.
It's not just that they're younger or more athletic. It's that they've been doing this for their whole teenage years, like just living in these gyms.
Mm-hmm. That's the exciting part, though. I think we're going to see in these next, I'd say 3 seasons, is a kind of a generational wave. And I'm sorry we're getting off on a tangent here, but just to keep it short, what we saw in the past few seasons of Sasuke in Japan were competitors that regularly just kind of like grew up with or were adults and adjusting to the difficulty of the course, to younger competitors that grew up training their entire life being a fan and them dominating and switching over a generational shift. And I think we're going to get that coming up in the next few seasons of American Ninja Warrior. We saw it kind of this season, but I think you're definitely going to see it these next few seasons. And you can definitely get kind of a feel for that with these competitors because they're actually going to be eligible in about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think Daniel Gill kind of signaled the beginning of that wave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was a good matchup to start off the whole thing. And then we moved on to the big college rivalry, the Georgia versus Florida matchup. I don't know. So they were good, but I got to say Victoria versus Melissa was a weird matchup. We had Melissa being 9 inches taller, a top collegiate climber, and Victoria felt like she was barely saving it. It was really cool to watch. Don't get me wrong. Like she kept saving it. I don't know how she did over and over again, but I was rooting for her to make it the whole way through. She had a rough fall in the ring of fire, and she fell on the floating tires and caught it. But she ended up falling on the pole grasper eventually. It was like, and Melissa was just steady the whole way through, just like very methodical, almost like watching one of the climbers on the regular show just kind of pick their way through a non-timed course.
Yeah, it was fun for me. You know, some of these runs are kind of fun by the fact that it's kind of just a hot mess of a run, right? Where she's just trying to struggle through everything, and you're like, "Oh, will she make it? Will she make it?" You know, this is what I was expecting a little bit more of when the show was initially provided, and I can't complain. We don't want every single run to be, you know, just drab. You know, they're all neck and neck. At a certain point, you know, it's kind of fun to see some competitors struggling on these things, and I appreciated that. So I'm not complaining. It was kind of fun to watch.
And it's funny that in the anchor run, we had Garrison versus Doug. Doug is a cheerleader, but he's built like a brick.
Dude is gigantic.
So, I couldn't believe the size of the guy. Like, that's the thing when we read these little articles and things trying to prepare for this, and we're like, okay, so that guy's a cheerleader. Okay, you get some idea of what he might look like or how he might. Oh, this guy is like an upside down triangle. Like he's just a rock. And,
an upside down triangle. That's a first.
So
it's apropos, but wow, I've never heard. It is apropos though. Like this guy's shoulders are ridiculous. With that said, I am really, really curious now to see some of the. I forget what team it is, but there's a team with a football player on it, and I really want to see what that guy looks like.
Yeah, and you would think this guy wouldn't have the speed. You know, he might be, you know, way down. He definitely showed throughout the episode that was not the case. In this one, he didn't really have to do a whole lot because Garrison unfortunately fell in the ring of fire just out of nowhere, which knocked them out. So Florida went out, or at least lost their first matchup.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's like, in terms of the two matchups, right? This was a little bit more forgettable just because it was kind of a blowout, but it was fun. The more important thing is that we had two clear teams that kind of stood out, and it made for a good climax to the episode.
Yeah, well, this matchup is always the second matchup is almost always the most important one because if you win, then you've got a break. But if you don't, you have to go up against the winner of the first round immediately, right? So, poor Florida had to come out of that and face Houston, like right after, when they're worn out and Houston's now fresh from having a break. Like it's just the worst spot to be in.
Oh yeah.
So their matchup against Houston went about how you'd expect it to go. Haley against it out. This time when she got to the wall, she missed it again, and then we had right behind her Melissa catch up. Melissa's the really tall girl from Florida, so it looked like she was about to lose it again by someone beating her at the warped wall, but she did make it on her second attempt, so I was really happy to see that she was able to come back. So that just proved that the whole team was solid, right? Because Zach Tamayo and Matisse had both proven themselves really crazy strong, and Haley proved that she could make up the warp wall, so it was like a triple threat. Like this team looked absolutely unbeatable.
Yeah, I mean, in the first run, Haley's only misstep was the warped wall, and she kind of avenged that misstep. So she avenged everything, and she clearly looked incredibly strong in this run. It was really good to see, and I don't know, I'm still very high. I do not discredit myself, or I'm not ashamed of my pick of having Houston number one. They were so strong, and I don't know. I love this team. I really hope we see them again if we have another season. And to Melissa's credit, she was incredibly strong as well. I think if we were to give her some time to catch a breather, I think we would have seen a third woman up the warped wall.
Oh, 100%. I don't doubt that at all. She was really good, though, in both their runs. I thought she was good.
Mm-hmm. Not much to say about the guys. I mean, the guys just blew out the other ones. It's like, I don't know what to say about it. It was kind of just unfortunate to watch, really.
Yeah, the other teams, I mean, they were doing fine. The ones falling behind, they just couldn't catch these guys. They were just so unbelievably fast and so effortless.
Yeah, it'd be like one of us like competing against Drew Dreschel. It's like after a certain point, you just see Drew Dreschel, and we're like back at like the second obstacle.
Yeah. So that knocked out Florida. Houston moves on to the final, the relay showdown. So moving on to our next matchup, it was Georgia versus TCU. We actually had a fast forward, the only one in the episode where Victoria from Georgia missed the sonic swing, so TCU took that round. I had like a completely unexpected thing here. Alexander Paris from TCU did phenomenal, man. He flew through. I was like, wait, how did I miss him on the first run through? This guy did crazy. Oh, and then I realized it's because he was against Zach Tamayo in his first run, so he didn't look quite as good, but man, oh man, on his second run through, he did great.
Mm-hmm. I think it was like to a discredit of everybody running against Team Houston. It's like, oh man, Team Houston's just making them look bad, but they're actually pretty good to their own right. Yeah, props to him. He looks like he's 12, by the way. Oh,
nobody looked as young as Kid does, but he was actually the youngest one there. They said, if I was going to pick, the second most standout performance had to be freaking Doug Legg from University of Georgia, just holding down that anchor position and doing the double duty of winning 2 in a row to keep his team in it. He beat Nolan first. He just rips through the course right up the wall, the fastest time of the day. So University of Houston, as fast as they were going, wasn't as fast as this guy. 45 seconds to do the whole thing.
Yeah, Doug Legg was definitely a standout in terms of the men of the episode. He stood out like a sore thumb. I mean, nothing more. He was great and really impressive.
Yeah, so then he beat the other guy, Alexander Paris, as well, and he beat his own time. He did it 42 seconds his second time through. Like, absolutely phenomenal. We need our own equivalent to the Palm Wonderful. What do we call it? The athletically profound run of the night.
Don't steal my catchphrases, Rich.
We have to. I'm telling you, we need T-shirts, man. I'm telling you right now, I love that phrase so much.
For real. But he is definitely athletically profound. I think we had a good mix of people that were very, very impressive and athletically profound. I mean, Doug Legg was one. We had the two guys, pretty much all of Team Houston. And I forget the name of what's the first girl that went up the warped wall? What's her name?
That was
Emily something, right?
Emma Becerra.
Emma Becerra, yeah.
Yeah, from TCU.
Great stuff.
Yeah, all around great performances. It makes me look forward to the future episodes for sure. But that meant Georgia moved on to face Houston in the relay showdown, and I wasn't sure how that was going to work out. I thought, it could kind of go either way. As strong as Houston was, like Doug, I don't know if he had the fastest times, maybe he can, pull off an upset here.
This is one of those things where I just see editing things and it kind of spoils it for me. And I'm not blaming the show for this one. It's just more of me. I got really nervous when I hear that they made it a point to point out that Tamayo is running on the third part of the leg. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
we don't necessarily, both Tamayo and the other kid were both good. We don't know why he's going third, but I found it interesting that they made it a point to be like, that's odd that he's going on the third part of the run. We should definitely have Kid, who's great on the third part. I'm like,
We'll see if that matters as we
Yeah.
go to the run. Yeah, it is a little over the top. Yeah. For sure.
With that said, I'm sure I was like a fraction of the audience that actually picked up on that.
It did raise a red flag for sure. So they started, they did the traditional, the women face off at the first part of the course. And like you said, instead of having Matisse run the last part, they had him run the middle part versus Bradley, and then Zach versus Doug at the end.
What do you think about that placement? Do you like? I definitely would have had Kid as the third person that ran the back part of the course, but we weren't there, and we just don't know their backgrounds enough. So, it's all benefit of hindsight. But from what I saw from this episode, I definitely would have found Kid to be better in that position.
Nah, I don't think that's. I mean, hindsight, of course, you would switch it out, but no, I don't think that's necessarily the case at all. Like you said, I think there's probably parts that we don't understand or don't know the full details. Where maybe they go to the same gym, they might know that Matisse can go up that warped wall. Well, he did at the beginning. We know he can fly through that first part of the course, but maybe he wasn't as confident in his rope climbing, right? Because it's going to end with the final climb. So, that could very well have been the factor. Because that would have been the big part to me. Who can climb the rope faster is who should be pulling down the last leg.
Yeah, great point, man.
But we don't know. We didn't get to see it because, unfortunately, Zach fell on the dueling salmon ladders. I mean, up to that, they were pretty neck and neck. They had a slight lead. They were closing it down, or closing the gap, I guess. Georgia was starting to catch up a little bit, but then Zach ends up falling on the salmon ladder and refused to let go. He was just hanging there, like desperately trying to put it back on the rungs.
Poor guy. That was just not going to happen. But
Yeah.
That's brutal. I will say this: it was quite a shock. Just from before this even show, out of all of the teams, if somebody was to say one of the teams was going to fall on the salmon ladder in the relay, Team Houston would have been at the very bottom of my list. So absolutely shocking, but that's what I kind of like about the show is that you want to have a lot of unexpected circumstances. And props to team. Oh boy, what's the team? What's the name of the team that won against them?
It's Georgia that won.
Sorry, I was calling them the red shirts this whole time because all I saw was red this whole time. Team Georgia. Props to them. They stuck it out. Even when at the beginning of the relay, when Team Houston was doing really well, Team Georgia, they were still gutting it out, giving it their all, and keeping up with it to the point where Doug Lemon, or is it Doug Lemon? Doug something. Doug Legg. Yeah. He was really, up there. Like, even if Tamayo were to go get up that salmon ladder, it would have still been incredibly close. It wasn't something where it was like a blowout. So I was really impressed with Team Georgia. With that said, I will say overall, them going into the championships, the big question mark for me is going to be the oh God, what's her name? The Victoria Case. Victoria Case, the woman on their team. She wasn't bad or anything, but you can definitely tell that she was the most inexperienced, I think, out of the entire episode, out of all the competitors. And she's going to have to make up that ground if she's going to do well in the championships, competing against a lot of the women and the relay. If she's able to get that down, they have a good chance, but she's going to be the big question mark going into the championships for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's summed up. I actually noted how they introduced them. So as they're starting the relay, they said, Haley, who's been very strong today, versus Victoria, the former cheerleader.
Oh, geez, I didn't even get that. Yeah.
I thought that said a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But, maybe it's just more speaking about Haley Houston, who really was a big standout.
Yeah. Victoria was fine. She did struggle a bit. Obviously, she had a couple of falls and stuff, but I think she can tough it out, and I think she did fine, for the relay. They did get a bit of a lead, but Haley was so strong, that's not to be completely unexpected.
Yeah, I think it was more inexperience than, her being bad or anything like that. It's just, if this is like your first or second time doing these obstacles, you're not going to look as good as somebody that's done it a bunch of times.
Yeah. So that was it for the first episode. Like we said, I think it was good overall. A good start to the rivalries, a good start to the whole season, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the coming episodes. I'm wondering if they're going to keep swapping out that fourth obstacle like they did last season, or fourth or fifth.
I'm pretty sure they will. I mean, it would be kind of mundane if they didn't. With that said, I'm not sure if they filmed all of this at the same location. But I'm pretty sure they have to swap one out. I really liked this episode. I'm really optimistic, way more optimistic than I was when this show was initially announced. And I found a lot of these competitors really impressive. I think one thing that I wasn't expecting, and it just hit me watching this, was how young these competitors are. I don't know why, but I was expecting a lot more people my age going into it, because I'm, in grad school. It's like I'm used to seeing people in their late 20s, early 30s, and I was kind of expecting that. It didn't really dawn on me that we were going to get college freshmen, people that are like 19 and 20. And that's really refreshing, because it's going to be a whole lot of people that are very youthful, have a whole lot more explosive energy, and just naturally have that youth. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference when you see somebody that's older, and a difference for somebody that really looks like a kid and has that youthful energy. It was really refreshing for me.
Okay, so moving on, we have the National Ninja League at iCore Fitness, which is probably one of the nicest courses out there. Like, that is an absolutely phenomenal looking professional course. Didn't you find, just from the brief clips that we got?
Oh, yeah, nice gym. I mean, these were not shadily built obstacles. Like, these were really professional looking, especially that is it called Big Dipper? I forget the name of it, but it's Big Dipper.
Big
right?
Dipper looked great.
Yeah, it looked like straight out of a roller coaster. Like these are some really well made obstacles. Good stuff.
So they jumped right into it. This is actually probably one of the shorter videos we've seen, with a very, very condensed. So we had Michael Torres.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, it was all right. It was okay. It's a nice change. Sometimes I like getting a little more flavor to it. This was a pretty good balance, I think. But yeah, Michael Torres, I think, at the short end, because he just kind of breezed through his run. He got third place. And second, Naj Richardson, the Phoenix, who is, I'm telling you, like, as much as I liked him on the regular season, the more I see of him in these local competitions, I think we're going to be seeing him for a while, because he looks so strong.
Oh, yeah, he's great. And I see both of these guys that are so good back to back, and I'm like, who on earth is going to be number one? Like, who beat out these guys?
Well, clearly it was going to be John Stevens, who took first place.
Yeah, clearly. But,
yeah, clearly.
Man, John Stevens, like, one thing that really stood out to me that I had no idea about, and I hope you caught this, Rich, is that I think it was the Philadelphia finals. Was that it?
Yeah.
It was the Philadelphia course, where he is the only person that completed it, and he was a tester. Nobody completed that course on the actual show, but yet he did it as a tester. Man, so impressive. That is some big stuff, dude.
That's impressive, especially when you think of who it was that didn't make it through, right? You look at the Philly finals, it is like so many of the biggest names. Like there you get Jeff Britton, Joe Moravsky, Chris Wilczewski, Ryan Stratus, Mike Bernardo, like all of these, like some of the strongest athletes out there weren't able to finish this course, and he did.
Yeah. I mean, we have to assume he's going to be on next season. And I'm really curious about this guy because I haven't seen enough about him. I haven't heard enough about him, but clearly he is way up there in terms of skill.
Yeah, so that's definitely a name we'll be watching for. So next we had, in third place for the women, we had Kayla Colby. They showed her on a couple of obstacles at the beginning. She did a really good job on the Big Dipper. She looked really solid, but unfortunately she fell on the balance obstacle. And second, we had Alyssa Beard back. She's still injured, unfortunately, has a taped ankle, and she's having some problems with her shoulder, which may have actually contributed to her going out on the salmon ladder. She was trying to readjust and unfortunately fell there. And in first place, not a big surprise. Anytime she's in the competition, you have a pretty good feeling she might be at the top, as Jessie Lebrecht hasn't been beaten since the first comp of the season. She ended up going out on the flying bar.
It's crazy, dude. I don't even know what to say anymore.
Just unbelievable.
Props to her, I guess.
Watching
Like,
her.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like what? There's nothing you can even say. Like, just watch her like dominate. I'm surprised she fell on the flying bar. Like, surprised she didn't finish the whole thing. It wouldn't have shocked me at all to have her finish the whole course. It actually surprises me when she doesn't.
Mm-hmm. I'm expecting. I don't know. I'm expecting a whole lot from her next season. I think she might be the next Jessie Graff. I don't know. It's just a feeling.
I can't even. I want the Team Ninja Warrior matchup so bad. I hope it happens between them. Like, I just have to see this.
That'll be fun. I didn't even think about that because for me it was always Megan Martin versus Jessie Graff. But that's a good point, man. Like, that'll be fun.
I think they're the only two female captains, so it very well could happen.
Good point.
So that is it for this episode. Thank you for joining us for the College Ninja Warrior, as we're going to call it from now on.
Yes, we are calling it College Ninja Warrior. I can't do the full name. That's brutal.
Twitter can barely handle the full name, Team Ninja Warrior College Madness. But we'll be back with the next episode. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach us at Ninja Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. We are on Facebook, and you can reach us via email at rich@ninjapodcast.com. And Bijan, if they want to contact you, how do they do that?
Hit me up at Twitter and Instagram at Bijan151. That is Bijan 151. And happy holidays / Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, enjoy your Thanksgiving, everyone south of the border. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
Peace, y'all.